Well, I took a week off last week and now I'm back for $5 in the World, another revised chapter. This is the chapter I wrote called Raising Colleagues, and it's reflection on the way Dad raised my brother and myself in particular, and how his approach shaped how we turned out, and kind of the ideas behind it, and how it also translated how he dealt with everybody else that he came into contact with. And I hope you like it. I added more detail than the first time I did it. It's a longer chapter than the original, and I hope the added material makes it better. I really could use your feedback on this one because this has a little bit more in it about my brother and me, not just my dad and my mom too, and not just my dad. So let me know if it makes it richer, makes it better, if it's a distraction, or however you feel about it. Let me know. So without further ado, as it's late, I'm going to read Raising Colleagues. It must be apparent by now that our dad did not live life with the conventional approach. He left home at an early age, not entirely his choice. He was an entrepreneur who bet on himself regularly. If something interested him, his first thought was, how can I do that too? He possessed his own ideas about raising children as well. Dad and Bonnie, his first wife, did not have children together, although they did adopt Ron. When he married our mom, neither one knew if they would or could have children together. As it turned out, they could. I was born a year into their marriage, and Dad was reportedly thrilled at the opportunity to have a son or a daughter. Mom loved the idea of having a family with Dad. From the beginning, I was referred to as Burr's boy. I was named William Edward. William, in honor of my dad's younger brother, Billy. He was killed in action during the Battle of the Hurtgen Forest during World War II. Edward was the name of the Congregationalist minister who was instrumental in my dad's coping with the sudden loss of his first wife, Bonnie, as well as his growing faith in God. Edward Lewis officiated the wedding of my mom and dad. But I was not known by any variation of either name. I've always gone by the name Duke. Like so much involving Dad, there's a story to this name. Dad told it this way. The day I was born, he was pacing the hospital waiting room, waiting. This was during a time when fathers did not go into the delivery room. While he was hoping for news, a nurse went through pushing a bassinet. He looked into it as she passed and said to her, if my baby looks like that baby, I'd be the luckiest man in the world. He looks like a little Duke. She asked Dad if he was Mr. Gray. And when he affirmed that he was, she said, that is your baby. He told this story so many times to so many people, I became known as Duke. I still am. I mention this because it's a good illustration of the impact his storytelling had on people around him. For the record, I'm glad that this happened because my mom told me that she had wanted to call me Will. Most of their social circle were my dad's friends and associates. That's why most people referred to me as Burrs. My mom found it mildly amusing. My brother's origin story was another tale Dad loved to recount. Being a second marriage for both parents, they were older than any of my peers' parents. My dad was 47 years old when I came along. Mom was 39. By the time she was about 45 years old, the family physician, Dr. Gillard, told her that she was beyond the age of needing to concern herself with birth control. She took his advice to heart, and that's how I ended up with a younger brother, about 5 years after I was born. My parents and the doctor hung out in a lot of the same places. Dad made a point of loudly greeting him as Mr. Gillard whenever they met in public as a joke about the maternity advice he had given Mom. Dad did not raise us the way the other dads he knew raised their kids. Both of our parents told us that they were asked about their parenting ideas fairly often. Chuck and I, life seemed normal enough, but now we see how different it was for us, and we've always been thankful for it. Mom and Dad approached discipline with a reliance on persuasion and motivation. Dad would tell us why rules were what they were. He would give us reasons why they were in our best interests. They were not heavy handed when it came to discipline, but we did behave pretty well because we wanted to measure up and make them happy. We didn't have chores that we had to do. Dad hated yard work, so to make sure he never had to do it, he refused to buy a lawnmower. The yard was done by a neighbor kid or a lawn service. He paid a neighbor to clean the pool. We weren't really old enough to do that anyways. He told critics of our easy-looking life that we had a lifetime to work and a short time to be children. He had other ways to make sure we learned the value of hard work. One way he instilled that in us was to bring us with him on business trips and tours of his sales offices. We saw up close what running a business looked like, how to manage relationships, and how to plan for contingencies. He would talk to us about why he made the decisions he did. He even asked us what we would do just to get us thinking like a business person. He brought us to sales seminars and motivational speakers from time to time. We went to sales meetings. We were in elementary school. It wasn't all of the time, but it was often enough to get a sense of how the world worked. His managers, administrators, and salespeople all knew us and told my dad that talking to us was like talking to miniature adults. That was another thing people questioned. Why do the boys think it's okay to address adults as equals, to ask questions, to disagree with them? Dad told them that we had minds of our own and he thought they worked pretty good. We weren't disrespectful, we were simply in condition to engage with adults because that's what our family did. Dad introduced us to things that he liked because he figured that if he liked them, we would probably like them too. His favorite card game was gin rummy. I learned how to play it and play it well before I was in the first grade. Chuck became a good gin player too. Dad liked to eat at nice restaurants, and when we weren't home eating Mom's remarkable cooking, Mom was an amazingly talented cook. She loved to cook so much that if she made something only Dad liked, she made sure to make something Chuck and I liked too. We all ate together, but it was sometimes like a restaurant when it came to the variety of meals on the table. We weren't raised with the drama of having to eat everything on our plate or else, nor the you'll eat what you got or go hungry threats. Letting people go hungry was not in our mom's playbook. A side note to this, as we got older and had friends over, we had to tell them to have a food option in mind so that when Mom asked them if they wanted something to eat, we could get it resolved quickly. She would keep rattling off food options till she landed on one that they would say yes to. Like I said, Mom loved to feed people. We ate in restaurants with our parents when most kids had to stay home with babysitters. Mom and Dad seemed to really like taking us places with them. We traveled quite a bit with them from a young age. When I was 7 years old, Dad told me that he wanted to take me to London and Edinburgh when I turned 8, just the two of us. I couldn't wait to go. He asked me what I wanted to see when we got there, and I said, castles and cemeteries. We saw several of those and more. We traveled in comfort. We stayed at the Dorchester in London. We ate at some of the best restaurants. I even had suits and ties, they were clip-ons, and even a trench coat. One night he ordered escargot. I asked him what those were, and he said they were snails cooked in garlic butter. I made a face and said, gross. He gambled. He said that I should order them and try them before passing judgment. Why did he not just have me try one of his? Two reasons. One, while he was exceedingly generous in most things, he did not like to share his food. And two, he figured that I wouldn't like them and he could eat a second batch for himself. He miscalculated because I thought they were delicious and it became one of the things I checked on the menus for whenever it seemed likely that they would be on it, and I still do. When Chuck got old enough to leverage the fairness card, he brought up this trip often to gain a sympathetic edge. Instead, Dad promised to take him overseas when he turned 8, and he did just that. Reading was a big deal to both of our parents. They read to us every night before bed. I was partial to history, biography, and mythology. We both liked books about football. They didn't just read to us, they read a lot themselves and set an excellent example for us. When I would ask Dad a question, he would say, I'll tell you the answer, but when you learn how to read, you'll be able to find that out for yourself. It definitely motivated me to learn how to read. I was reading before kindergarten started, and by first grade, I could read any book in the school library. Chuck became an accomplished reader as well, and we both still love to read. Dad didn't play outdoors with us. Chuck and I never saw him even break into a jog once in our lives. He did make sure that we got to play whatever sport we wanted to play, mostly football. One year, I missed the sign-up period for the Mona Shores Boys Club football season. By this time, I was fully invested in playing football, and I was a good player for my age. I was devastated. The party line was that the cutoff was the cutoff. Dad told me to let him see if he could work something out with them. He went to a meeting, and when it was over, I was allowed to sign. I don't know how he did it. I just know that he did. And I think he did it in such a way that they wanted to help because I had no blowback from it during the season. Our parents came to all our games. Chuck played football too. Then we would pile in the car and go to East Lansing to watch Spartan football. Dad raised us on stories of Spartan football and brought us to games as soon as we were old enough to walk. My friends spent the fall months in deer blinds hunting with their dads. I sat on the 50-yard line at Spartan Stadium with mine. Sundays were for church and breakfast at a restaurant. When Dad got sober at the tender age of 38 years old, he devoted himself to being in church every Sunday to spend an hour with the man upstairs. He was not deeply theological, but he did believe in the fundamental Christian doctrines and believed we needed to be in church to hear a good sermon. Chuck and I felt like the children's Sunday school classes were too babyish, so we sat in church with our folks. We were fortunate to have excellent ministers in those days. My dad made friends with each of them, just as he had with Edward Lewis. He held them each in high regard. I'm thankful for this element of our upbringing. It laid a solid foundation for my own faith development later in life. This commitment to church on Sunday did not get put on hold when we were on vacation, nor was it predicated on any particular denominational devotion. If it was a church, we went. There was a Catholic church in Pontiac, Michigan, where the Detroit Lions used to play their home games in Pontiac, and when we would go there for early service, if we were going to a Lions game, the Mass was geared to the Spanish neighbors. So we would sit there and listen to the service in Spanish. No matter, Dad felt a sense of sanctuary there too. To this day, I'm not uptight about denominational differences. For me, it is about the essentials of the faith. Just like we could read books beyond our age level, our parents took us to shows and movies that other kids wouldn't be allowed to see. Dad figured we could handle the material, and they were with us to make sure. They just wanted us to experience the best that life had to offer so that we would want it too. This was another way he built a work ethic in us. Everything fun that we did, we understood that it was God's grace and the results of putting in the work that made these things possible. He was a big believer in the idea that if people knew what was possible, they would develop the mindset to go get it. He took this approach with people who worked for him. He wanted his more sheltered people to get out and see the world. He made all expenses paid trips, performance prizes, he made all expenses paid trips, sales performance prizes that a lot of his people won because he wanted them to see it all. We lived in a small neighborhood most of our growing up years, and I think that enhanced the closeness of the four of us as well. Dad had a pool put in at each of the houses we lived in during those years. He said that he wanted our house to be the place kids wanted to play so that we would have a good chance to make friends. It was a reasonable plan. But one summer, when I was around 6 years old, the older kids I played with decided that I was too young to hang out with them. They started teasing me to freeze me out of the group. They would call me over, and when I went their way, they would scatter. Dad came home early one day and found me moping. He asked me what was wrong, and I told him. He said, "The next time they call you over, don't go. Just do this." The this was to show me the one finger salute. I didn't know what that was about, but I trusted him. I was looking forward to the next encounter. It didn't take long, and this time when they called, I stood my ground and flipped them off. They were old enough to know what I'd done was something I wasn't supposed to do, and they told their moms. My mom didn't know about this plan, and when our phone started ringing, she had no answer for her friends. When it all got sorted out, the teasing was done, and the relationships were back in order. Dad understood that I just needed something to switch the momentum, and he gave it to me. He didn't do it for me or raise any issue with the other parents. He just gave me a way to level the playing field if I was willing to use it. So these examples could go on, and some will show up in other chapters. When he was about 100 years old, he was reminiscing with us about this approach to raising us. He reminded us that his style was not always appreciated by his peers, but he told us that he was proud of whatever role he and Mom had in the way that we had turned out. And that is always good to hear. But the next part was the concept I had not heard from him before. He said that when people told him that what he was doing was no way to raise children, his stock answer was, "I'm not raising children. I'm raising colleagues." I cherish this idea from him, and I hope that my children know the same sense of connection with me. That's it. That's the revised version of Raising Colleagues. Let me know what you think in the comments, and like and share this if you would, please. And thanks again for watching and listening. and stay tuned for next weekend with another revised chapter will drop. Goodbye for now.